Hi girls, in this video we are going to be going through homeostasis, excretion, the skin, the kidneys and the respiratory system. So to get started, what is the process of homeostasis? It is the ability of our bodies to maintain a constant internal environment. So this is how our body maintains the correct levels of oxygen, maintains the correct levels of water and salts in our body. So how do we do this? We have different organs that are involved. Our skin, it maintains a body temperature of 37 degrees. Our kidneys maintains pH of 7.4, and also it will excrete toxins and other waste products. And our lungs controls our CO2 levels in our body by maintaining oxygen levels. So the brain actually controls all of these activities. What are adaptations that we see in biology for homeostasis to occur? Well, if we look at plants, we see leaves have a flattened surface. This allows for greater surface transpiration and photosynthesis, for example. In humans, we have the alveoli, which are the tiny air sacs that are in our lungs. They're numerous. We have so many of them, which again, it increases the surface area and allows for a greater gas exchange to occur. When we talk about temperature regulation in animals, there are two types. We have endothermic. We are endothermic. Another way of describing it is warm-blooded. And we have ectothermic or cold-blooded. So when we talk about endothermic, it basically means that we can generate our own heat, that our bodies regulate temperature without having too much of an input from the external environment. So we can keep our body temperature at 37 degrees approximately. Whereas in ectotherms or cold-blooded animals, an example would be in frogs, alligators, and they cannot control their own temperature, and their temperature is very much so affected by the external environment. So if external temperatures are cold, then their body temperature decreases, and as a result they will go into hibernation. When their body temperature starts to go up again because external temperatures are increasing, then they come out of hibernation. So when we talk about the first organ of excretion, we're going to look at the skin. First of all, let's look at the definition of what excretion is. It is eliminating unwanted products or metabolic waste from our body. When we talk about the skin is an organ of excretion because it gets rid of excess water and salt from our body. It is also an organ of protection because it protects all of our delicate organs inside, and it also regulates temperature. Okay, so when we look at the actual diagram of the skin, there are different parts that you need to be able to label. You need to be able to draw this picture. It is the same for ordinary and the same for higher level biology. Okay, so the first layer up here, we have the epidermis, and the bottom layer is the dermis. Obviously, the dermis is the more detailed part that you need to know. So in the epidermis, we have the outer cells that are the older cells, the older skin cells. What we can see coming out through the epidermis is the hair and a sweat pore. So that's all that we're going to be able to see when we look at our actual epidermis on the outside of our skin. Underneath, when we're talking about the dermis, what lies in the dermis, okay? At the bottom of the dermal layer, we have adipose tissue. What is adipose tissue? Adipose tissue is a layer of fatty deposit which actually insulates our body, keeps temperature regulated in our skin also. So that adipose tissue there creates a layer of warmth around our body. What are all the individual parts inside the dermis? We have the sweat gland, which is attached to the sweat pore. So when we are excreting our our water and our salt from our body, it is going to be created in our sweat gland and excreted through our sweat pore. The hair actually has an important job in terms of temperature regulation. What happens when it's cold? Our hairs stand up. So our hairs stand up to create a layer of warm air that insulates our skin. What helps it do this? The erector muscle. So when our body senses cold temperatures, the erector muscle is pulled on, and as a result, the hair follicle stands up. What are these things here? They are sensory receptors. What happens if I touch something hot? I move my hand away. So what happens is my sensory receptors are feeling that heat, and it's sending a signal to my brain, and my brain responds by saying, move your hand. What are these blood vessels down at the bottom? So we have our arterioles, which are the smallest type of arteries, and our venules, which are our smallest type of veins. So these are attached by our capillaries. So what we have here are capillaries joining our arterioles and our venules together, which is supplying the skin with blood. Okay, so they are all the different parts of the skin. You need to be able to label all of those different parts and be able to discuss what each part does also. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how our body regulates our temperature through our skin. So when it is very hot outside, what happens? We sweat. How do we sweat? Our sweat glands are secreting water onto the skin. So how does that happen? Okay, so blood vessels, our arterioles, they become dilated and they increase the blood flow to these areas, which obviously is bringing more water to these areas. With this, the water is excreted through our sweat glands and our sweat pores. So our arterioles, they dilate and they increase the blood flow to these areas. So what happens when you go for a really long run? Your face goes really red. If you look at your arms, you're able to see your veins really, really clearly. What's happening is our arterioles, our blood vessels, are dilating and increasing the blood flow all around our body. Okay? This process is called vasodilation. As a result of the heat that we would feel from outside, our hairs, they lie flat. Hairs do not stand up when we feel heat. Okay, so nothing happens really with our hairs when we have high temperatures outside. So, talking about how our body regulates our temperature when it is cold outside, I was saying there a second ago that our hairs will lie flat when it's hot outside, but whereas when it's cold, what happens? We get, I was going to say chicken skin, that's another way of saying it, but we say that you have goosebumps, okay? So in French, it's called chicken skin. Okay, so we get goosebumps, our hairs stand up. How does that happen? Okay, so the process is called vasoconstriction. So what happens to our bodies when we are cold, when we're feeling the cold? How does our body regulate temperature? How do we stay at approximately 37 degrees? So first of all, we were talking about a second ago that when we're hot, our hairs actually don't stand up, they don't do anything. When we are cold, piloerection happens. So what happens here? Piloerection is when those erector muscles tug on our hair follicles, causing our hairs to stand up, and as a result we get goosebumps. Okay, so when we get goosebumps, that is our hair is standing up and creating an insulating layer of hot air that is trapped along our skin to leave out or to keep the cold out. Okay, what is vasoconstriction? We don't want this cold temperature to be circulating around our body. So as a result, our blood vessels, they shrink and they come away from our skin. This is called vasoconstriction. So to stop that cold being transported all around our body, our blood vessels, they stay inside as much as they can, away from our skin. Okay, so it stays as low down as possible so that cold temperature does not get transported all around our body. And the last point, we shiver. This shivering that we would feel if it was really cold outside is our body trying to move and keep active so our temperature is kept up. Okay, so to regulate body temperature in cold temperatures, we have our erector muscles pull our hair follicles, giving us goosebumps. We have vasoconstriction, where our blood vessels, they shrink and they want to stay away from the top layers of our skin, and we have shivering. Okay, moving on, we want to talk about the urinary system. So the urinary system consists of our kidneys, our ureter, our bladder, and our urethra. Okay, I know that this is the part that you guys were finding difficult, so I tried to break it down as much as I can for you guys to understand it as best as possible. So what are the functions of our kidneys? They clean our blood by filtering it. The filtering units in our kidneys are called nephrons. Okay, we're going to be talking about our nephrons a lot in the next few minutes. What else do our kidneys do? They regulate our water and salt levels in our body. This is called osmoregulation. Okay, we don't want our salt levels to be too high, and we don't want our water levels to be too low. So to do this, we make sure that our urine that we produce has the right amount of water in it. So if we've had a really, really salty dinner, what's going to happen? Our body's going to try and retain as much water in it as possible, and as a result, our urine will be a darker colour of yellow. Whereas if you've drank loads and loads and loads of water, what's going to happen? We don't need to keep all of that. So as a result, our urine is going to be more dilute. It's going to be a clearer colour. Okay, so going through the different parts of the urinary system, we need to know how to draw this picture. Okay, same for ordinary and same for higher level. So when we talk about it, this is our right kidney, this is our left kidney. Pretend that you are a surgeon and you are doing a surgery on this person. They're sitting right, they're lying down in front of you. We see that their right kidney is on my left side and their left kidney is on my right side. Our aorta is bringing blood to our kidneys. We have our vena cava is bringing blood away from our kidneys. Our aorta is bringing blood that's rich in waste products to our kidneys, and our vena cava is bringing blood that is clean away from our kidneys. Okay, so our aorta is broken into renal arteries then that are going to go into each one of our kidneys. Then the vena cava is broken into renal veins that go into each of our kidneys also. On the top of our kidneys, we have these adrenal glands. What do they make? They make the hormone adrenaline. Okay, so what is coming out of the kidneys down here? We have our ureters, one ureter coming out from each of our kidneys. The ureter is going to bring our urine down into our bladder, where the urine is stored until we need to go to the toilet. What allows us to go to the toilet is these sphincter muscles. We open and close our sphincter muscles, which will allow us to go to the toilet. And when these are open, the urine flows out through the urethra. Urethra, same in men and same in women. We both have the same tube that carries urine out of the body. So now we're talking about how urine is actually formed. This is the ordinary level version of it. It's really helpful for higher level as well to form your basic understanding of it, and then we move on to a very detailed version of it as well in a minute. So just to go through where the actual kidneys are found. They're found underneath the diaphragm. So your diaphragm sits underneath your lungs, which sit in your thoracic chest cavity. Underneath that diaphragm, in the small of your back, is where your kidneys are formed. What does the small of your back mean? It's basically where your waist is on your back, and that's where your kidneys are found. So talking about the formation of urine. The aorta is what brings blood that is rich in waste products down to your kidneys. It then divides into your renal arteries. One renal artery goes into each of your kidneys. So those renal arteries are bringing blood that are rich in waste products into each of the kidneys. Okay, so aorta brings blood rich in waste products to the kidneys. The aorta divides into the renal arteries. In our actual kidneys, where we see the cortex, this is the outer part here. Our blood is filtered in the outer cortex, in this part here. Some of the useful products are reabsorbed. So that reabsorption occurs in the cortex and in the medulla, where we see the orange lining in here. Okay, so we have first, our blood is filtered in the outer cortex, the outer part of each of your kidneys. And then some of the useful substances that have been absorbed into the urine is reabsorbed into the blood, and that happens between the cortex and the medulla. Okay, so what sort of substances are reabsorbed? Well, we could have sugars, amino acids, some salt, and some water are reabsorbed. Okay, if the blood is too acidic or too alkaline, some of those substances are taken from the blood into the cortex. So it's going to go from the blood that has been carried in up through the renal artery, and it's going to be brought back into. So all of our wanted substances, all the substances that we want to keep in our body, are reabsorbed, so taken out of the urine, put back into the blood. Any substances that we do not want, that are waste or toxic, they are left in the kidneys, and this will form part of the urine. Okay, the urine is formed by mixing these waste products, mixing with toxic products that our body wants to get rid of, with urea that is made in the liver. Okay, so the clean blood leaves the kidneys through the renal vein to bring it back to the vena cava, which will go back up to the heart. Urine, however, that is formed inside the kidneys is going to flow from the pelvis up here all the way down into your ureter. That is the tube that brings the urine down to your bladder, where it will be stored until you need to go to the toilet. For ordinary and higher level, you also need to be able to draw the picture of the kidney and label the different parts. For ordinary level, you need to be able to label the cortex on the outside, the medulla on the inside part, the actual pelvis that's here. The pelvis brings urine from the kidney to the ureter, which then brings urine to the bladder to be stored. Renal artery brings blood rich in waste into the kidney. Renal vein brings blood cleaned away from the kidney back up to the vena cava and up to the heart. Okay, for higher level, you also need to be able to draw in the nephron that is here. Okay, you also need to be able to draw the collecting duct that's here as well at the end of each of the nephrons. That's the only difference between higher level and ordinary level drawing this picture. Higher level need to be able to include the picture of the nephron and the collecting duct in your picture.